Let's Go Ahead by the Macmillan Company. Big Bend Treasure. It was a hot July morning of the year 1930. Everyone in West Texas remembers that year as the second of a long, hard drought. Don Summerfield and his big brother Roddy were sitting on the tall posts of the corral gate. Through clouds of dust, they were counting the 2-year-old steers as the cowboys drove them into the corral. The steers were purebred Herefords. The Double Mountain Ranch had no scrub stock, but a sorrowful-looking bunch they were. Ordinarily, they were high-spirited, and the cowboys had to work hard to corral them. Now, however, they were too weak from starvation to do more than trot meekly through the chute to be counted. They were the last of the stock which the boys' father had hoped to market that year. But there were no sale for such stacks of bones as they were. He had sent 4 other herds to Abilene and loaded them on a train. They had gone for pasture to the well-watered mountains of Virginia. Now these were going too. This process took all the profits he might have made. The ranch pastures were burned brown. Every blade of grass, every bean hanging from the mesquite trees had been eaten. Even the prickly pear had been gathered into great stacks, their fine stickers burned off, and their fleshy lobes fed to the starving cattle. All the streams had failed, and their beds were as dry as the dusty ranch roads. Day after day, everyone had watched the skies, hoping for rain that never came. In the tanks, barely enough water was left for the horses. Don and Roddy slid down from their perches on the corral posts. They joined their father, looking sadly after the herd till it was lost in the dust-hazy distance. Then John Summerfield said huskily, "There goes our last chance," and turning abruptly, he walked toward the house. His shoulders had a discouraged droop. Don looked after his father with a troubled frown on his usually cheerful face. Lifting his blue eyes to his brother's, he asked, "What did he mean by that, Roddy?" "He meant that we're going to lose the ranch," answered Roddy. "The last payment will soon be due, and he was depending on the cattle to meet it. But the drought's got the cattle, and there's nothing else to sell." But, stammered Don, "won't Mr. Livingstone give him another chance? It's bound to rain sometime." "He would have," replied Roddy, "but to save his own place, he had to sell Dad's notes to some people in Fort Worth, and they're going to foreclose. They've got his money, and now they're going to take our ranch, too." "Then what'll we do?" "Why, go back to Fort Worth, and Dad'll have to go back to the office. It'll just about kill him. Mother wouldn't tell you, but I think you're old enough to know." Don was stunned. He stared at his brother, the dreadful truth sinking in. He didn't want to go back to Fort Worth. He had liked that pleasant city when he lived there, but the thought of losing the ranch crushed his heart. He loved the ranch, the cattle, the horses, the long stretches of blue-green distance, the serene level-topped mountain, the rush of the strong sage-scented south breeze, even the cold north wind that swept down from the high panhandle in winter, and the rushing waters that came down the canyons after a thunderstorm. Most of all, he loved his father and wanted to help him. "We've just got to do something, Roddy," he said. "Can't you think of anything we can do to earn some money? If we went down to Rotan, don't you believe maybe we could get jobs?" "I've been," replied Roddy. "Last time Dad drove down, I went along, and I combed that town. The best I could do was a soda jerker's job. I could jerk soda too, stoutly insisted Don. Nobody would take a boy as young as you, said Roddy. They even said I was hardly old enough, but I did get the promise of a job. They'll let me live in a little room at the back of the drugstore, and Dad's going to let me take 2 ponies along to rent to those 2 children. I could save most of my wages, and every little helps. I've got to help too, Roddy. Try to think of something I can do, pleaded Don. I've been thinking till my head's sore, replied Roddy. And that's all I've been able to round up. Slowly, the 2 boys turned back toward the ranch house. As they neared the house, Don said, "Car coming, Roddy. Looks like Henry's car." "'Tis," said Roddy. "I know his trailer." They quickened their steps to meet Henry as he drove up to the ranch porch. The boys liked Henry. He had been a buffalo hunter and a sheriff in frontier days. After making a comfortable fortune in cattle, he had sold his ranch and retired to Fort Worth. He was a genial old man whom everyone called by his first name. He loved to tell tall tales and always delighted the boys by accounts of his adventures in the early days with Indians and buffalo. As they sat around the dinner table that night, however, his stories took a new line. He entertained the family with legends of the Spanish explorations in Texas. He spoke of lost silver mines in the Big Bend country. From these mines long ago, burros had carried great fortunes. As they listened, Don and Roddy exchanged glances which said, "If we could only find one of those old silver mines, we could save the ranch." These shining fancies were not entirely dashed when Henry said, "Of course, boys, nobody has ever found any of those lost treasures. Many a party of prospectors has gone down into the Big Bend region, but they all come up away disappointed in the end. Spanish treasure is nothing but a dream." The other grown people at the table agreed, and Henry went on, "But there's still good hunting in that country, and I'm planning to go down there and bring back some skins from my den. I'm going to camp and hunt for a month or so. I thought maybe you'd lend me one of your boys, John, if he'd care to go. I need somebody to help about the camp. I'll pay him $5 a week and give him the trip. What do you say, boys?" "I wish I could go, Henry," said Roddy, "but I've promised to take a job in Rotan. Maybe Don could go, though." Henry looked at Don, whose eyes were shining with delight and hope. $5 a week, and maybe, just maybe, he might be the one to find a long-lost Spanish silver mine. "Would I go? Oh, boy!" he exclaimed. In a few minutes it was all arranged. Don went to bed that night with his head full of bright dreams. He would find a cavern full of Spanish silver. He would return it in triumph, pay off the note, and save the ranch. Four weeks later, Don and Henry sat before the campfire in front of their tent, eating their supper on the last day of their hunting trip. Don was thinking over their adventures. He had had a glorious time hunting with Henry. Stowed in the tent, ready to be packed in the trailer next morning, they had a lot of handsome hides, which Don had helped to secure. There were 2 wolf skins, 3 big deer hides, and a panther skin measuring 7 feet. And finally, there was a beautiful tawny coyote skin. Don had killed the coyote himself, and Henry had promised to have the skin tanned and mounted for him. Every moment of the hunting he had enjoyed, except when he was thinking of the ranch. Every time they had turned into a canyon, Don had scanned the walls for an opening that might be the entrance to a lost silver mine. Every time he had been disappointed. Hope had grown dimmer and dimmer with the passing days, and now he knew that he was not to find anything. Of course, he thought. I knew all the time I couldn't find any lost mine. I knew nobody ever did. But I sure wish I could save the ranch. Look, Henry, he cried suddenly. See those bats yonder? They look as if they came right out of the canyon wall. They do, for a fact, replied Henry. And what a lot of them. Don't know that I ever saw so many bats at one time. Maybe, said Don hopefully, they're coming out of a cave. I believe I'll go see. You won't find any Spanish treasure if you do locate a cave, replied Henry, grinning. There won't be anything in it more valuable than a bad smell. Wait till morning and you can take a look while I'm loading the trailer. Next morning, Don started out early to find the bat cave. His heart beat high with hope as he climbed the sloping side of the canyon. What if he were to find the lost treasure? As he rounded a jutting shoulder of a rock, he came upon the cave which it had hidden the evening before. The opening was large enough for him to stand in easily. Noticing the echoes as he struck the wall with a stick, he gave a loud shout. Loud and long the echoes thundered, and instantly from the dark reaches of the cave came a flight of bats disturbed by the noise. More and more, faster and faster they came. They flew not into the open, but through a small passage which branched off to one side. Where can they come from? Thought Don. Where can they be going? It would take a big cave for all those bats. And it might be a big one to make all those echoes. I'm going to explore it, even if it's dark. Flashlight in hand and walking carefully to avoid possible rattlesnakes, Don made his way into the dark passage. Eagerly, he scanned the walls for traces of a lost silver mine. For some distance, the cave wound along about the same in size. Then, after a sharp turn, it enlarged and became lighter. Presently it spread out into an immense room, its floor strewn with bones. One whole side of it opened upon a wide canyon glaring with sunlight. Here, thought Don, is the very place for a lost mine. Greatly elated, he searched the walls for traces of the rich lode of silver mentioned in the legends. Perhaps he might even find some of the great bricks of solid silver left by the Spaniards when they went away never to return. He searched in vain. There was nothing but rock. When he had finally convinced himself that there was no Spanish treasure, he stood downcast, looking across the cave. All at once he noticed the many bones spread across the floor. Cattle bones they were, and he stooped and picked up one of the horns. It would make a good hunting horn, he thought, and perhaps his father or Henry might like to have it. The horn was at least 2 feet long. A little farther away he saw a still longer one. These cattle must have been longhorns, he said to himself. No Herefords ever wore such horns. But if they were longhorns, they must have been in this cave a long time. Nobody raises longhorns now. They're as scarce as buffalo. Suddenly a thought flashed through his mind. Buffalo horns brought a price, he knew. Maybe he could sell these horns. The cave was full of them. Much excited, he searched for a still longer pair of horns. Laying them across his shoulder, he rushed out of the cave, turned a shoulder of the canyon, and found himself almost in front of the tent. "Henry," he shouted, "come and see what I found. The cave's full of them. Maybe I can sell 'em. Look, Henry." And he waved before the eyes of the astonished Henry the longest pair of horns Henry had ever seen. "Henry," he panted, "why couldn't we take some of these horns back with us and sell 'em? Maybe make enough to help pay off the note on the ranch. I've seen a pair of buffalo horns in the lobby of the hotel at Abilene. What do you think, Henry?" "Well, boy," returned Henry slowly, "I don't know, but you've run across a real idea. Let's go see what's there. This sure is a long pair. A taxidermist might mount 'em for you and sell 'em on commission. And then I might know a few people who'd buy 'em. We'll go see." In a short time, Don and Henry had selected the longest and finest horns in the cave and were packing them in the trailer. "How do you suppose, Henry," asked Don, "all these bones got into this cave?" "I've just been wondering. Ever hear of the famous lost herd of the Big Bend? No? Well, about 100 years or more ago, a herd of longhorns was being driven into Mexico for winter pasture. They got down in here somewhere, and one night a big thunderstorm stampeded the herd. It was like a cloudburst. The country was so rough and broken, the cowboys decided it was too dangerous to try to stop the steers in the dark. But the heavy rain from the thunderstorm and a light fall of snow before the morning blotted out all trace of them. The cowboys never found hide nor hair of a single steer. The herd probably ran down into this canyon and into the cave. Had to stop then. While they were milling around, here came the wall of water from the cloudburst upon the canyon and drowned the last one of them, and their bones have been lying here ever since. Waiting, said Don happily, to save the ranch. "Now this pair," said Henry, pointing to the longest, "I want. I'll pay you $150 for it." "Why, Henry," stammered Don, "I couldn't let you pay me for those horns. They're as much yours as mine." "No," said Henry firmly. "The hunt was mine, and I've had it. The cave and everything in it is yours. You found it, and you thought of the plan of selling the horns. And now I'll take you along to Fort Worth, and we'll see about disposing of the rest." It didn't take long to discover that the Longhorns would more than pay the money due on the ranch. And the very day John Summerfield got back to the ranch with his papers clear, Henry drove up. "Come here, Don," he shouted. "I've got a present for you." It was the longest pair of horns, polished and mounted, and measuring 7 feet 3 inches from tip to tip. It hangs today over the mantel in the sitting room of the Double Mountain Ranch, and is the pride of Don's heart.